Welcome viewers to MOOC's online course on Introduction to Indian Art and Appreciation. This is the fifth and the last module of the fourth and the last week of our course. And in this week, we were looking at this transition of Indian art from tradition to modern. In the previous module, that is module 4, we looked at some of the developments taking place in the context of Indian art during the post-independent period. And today in module 5, which is titled as Art Now, Trends in Contemporary Indian Art. It's a vast topic, of course, but still within the given time we will try to pick up at least a few significant trends which seem to be shaping the art activities of contemporary Indian art. Now, what are these trends? At least some of them. I mean, I am not making a whole list of trends, you can keep adding to it as you study more and more contemporary art. And again, some of these trends may not look to you in the first glimpse very new or very novel. For example, the very first one is, as I have listed them, addressing commonplace subject matters in an unelevated way. Isn't it something that you have already found in, let us say, Bikash Bhattacharya's works, maybe also in the works by those artists in the 40s who responded to the very inhuman situations of society like famine and partition. I am talking about those artists Chitta Prasad, Zainul Abidin and Somnath Roy. So, but still we need to find out where it is different. Then exploring new and unconventional mediums and elements of art. Now, this is, I am sure, something that has not happened, I mean, before the contemporary times in such a big way. People have tried out doing something little unconventional in terms of medium, but really making a breakthrough in the context of medium and exploring the possibilities of using unconventional materials, mediums, objects in their artwork. This is something that was not there in the 40s, 50s, 60s or even 70s. It's, well, from 80s, late 80s and definitely from 1990s, we see an enormous change in the attitude of the artist. The whole notion about the purity of form, that when you are doing an oil painting or a watercolor, you should stick to that medium. You can't put this and that. You can't put a little bit of plastic here or paper. I mean, that whole notion is gone. You are free to mix up your mediums. You are even free to use mediums which were never considered as worthy to be used as art medium before. Then another very interesting development that took place in contemporary art, that is using the already existing popular images from the surrounding visual culture and thus creating a collage composition. So, instead of, if I am to, let us say, for example, in my painting, if I am to draw the figure of a hero, instead of imagining a hero and drawing that, why don't I straight away use the image of any already popular, well-known heroes, either real life heroes or screen life heroes. Maybe I would like to use somebody like Shah Rukh Khan or somebody and then play on it. So, allowing the popular imageries to come inside your art studio, allowing them to be a part of your artwork. This got increasingly very popular among the artists, this way of working. Then another interesting development took place during this time, that is, I mean, we have had what we call public statues already before. We have these statues and public sculptures But now it is not about public statue or government commissioned statues of well known people. Artworks are to be now visualized in a way that you do not need any gallery space. I mean, it is not meant to be displayed within the confines of a gallery space. You have to display it outside. You have to display it in a public space. Hence the whole notion, the idea of public art emerged. And the new medium called, though it is very temporary, but because artists, they do bring in the possibilities of multimedia into it, so it is commonly known as installation art. So, you can have an installation art inside the gallery, you can have an installation art even outside the gallery in the public sphere. I mean, these are some of the trends, but there are many others which we, if you want, you can later on find out by studying the various developments in contemporary art. Now, let us begin by looking at an image of an artist who is definitely contemporary, at the same time he is no more, but he also belongs to slightly earlier age of 1960s, 70s. I mean, they belong to that same age group. They share the same age group. He shares, the Bhupen Khakkar is the name of this artist who shares the same age group with Bikash Bhattacharya, Jogen Chaudhary and all. Why I am showing his painting, this particular painting, is because I want to highlight this point that now artists are once again getting very intrigued by what is very commonplace, what is very ordinary, what is very banal in the society. I mean, this man is not dying out of hunger, or he is not a victim of any particular circumstances. He is a man who has just bought a packet of jalebis, and that is why this painting is called The Man Eating Jalebis. So, it is very interesting that this kind of urban happenings, urban scenes which are absolutely banal, very commonplace, very normal, and not that these particular subject matters have been elevated in your painting. They have simply been painted in a certain way that you keep looking at it and you feel a relationship between yourself and the space that you inhabit. So, in fact, when you look at these paintings, you do not know much about these people, you can't know through the paintings, but you know that there is something about this environment, something about this color scheme, something about that crumpled towel that is hanging on the rod over there, and all these things make this new group of paintings by artists like Bhupen Khakkar very significant as the new art of the urban modern Indian art. Then you also have something like this done by a much junior artist who, instead of making anything by his own or manually, every element, every object that you see in this world is either a found object or a collected object or an object, be it a plastic doll or a plastic car or an old shampoo bottle or anything, everything he collects or buys or picks up. These are all industrially produced, mass produced objects to be consumed at a very cheap price by popular, I mean common people. These are very popular objects, but nobody would think of using them in a serious artwork, at least in the previous era. But now it is possible and artists are exploring these possibilities. Look at this work also. Hundreds of plastic objects have been used in this painting. Well, can you call it a painting anymore then? Has he painted? Of course, there is a painted background, but then rest of everything that you see, all the figures, all the elements, none of them is painted except the background. Rest of all the figures are not made by him, they are collected, maybe you can call them junk, maybe you can call them found objects, maybe some of them this artist had bought from the shops, roadside shops, but then he has used them in a very intelligent way, in a very organized way, so that altogether they make some sense. But here, more than the subject matter, I am interested in drawing your attention to the possibility of different and unconventional materials in a work of art. Similarly here, done by a very consistent painter, Manjari Chakraborty, and the previous one was by Pinag Bonik, a very young artist. Now, Manjari has been also using very fragile, feeble, so-called unconventional materials for her artworks, but they create a kind of intimacy. Well, in this work, though it is not very unconventional, because we have seen papier-mâché dolls also in folk traditions, but the way Manjari uses them makes it very unconventional, because she is not doing a folk art, she is doing a modern, a contemporary art, but using a medium which is well, may not be very durable, but the artist does not care. More than durability, more than permanency, the artist is looking at a different kind of palpability of the materials one is using. Then one can also use personal materials, personal objects, like here the artist Manjari Chakraborty, she has used letters and leaves, pages from her own diary. I mean, this is very interesting that even your personal materials, like the pages from your own diary, the notes that you keep, the letters that you write or you receive, can also be used within an artwork as not just as an art material, but also as an intellectual material, as a thematic material. And these possibilities can be extended, and in contemporary Indian art, like elsewhere, artists have extended these possibilities of using anything and everything for artwork in the most unimaginable way, but in a very successful way. And along with that, since in the previous work we noticed that how personal objects can also become, not metaphorically but really physically, a part of your artwork, and when particularly it is being done by a woman artist, certain feminist perspectives are bound to appear as a very significant aspect of these paintings. So, though the paintings may, I mean the subject matters in these paintings may look very commonplace, like this one by a very well known artist from Delhi, Arpita Singh, but when you look at her paintings very carefully, then you gradually realize that what she is doing is she is looking at the world from a certain perspective. And here by perspective, obviously I am not implying a mathematical perspective, I mean a psychological perspective, an existential perspective. And it is this existential engagement with your life, with your work, it makes possible for the artists to use even personal materials as a part of your artwork, like even this one. So, we have artists like, for example, Bharti Kher, where she creates a huge elephant, a very soft huge elephant, but if you look at the elephant very carefully and closely, you will find what seems like a skin, beautiful textured skin of the elephant is full of bindis that Indian women use so often. So, even something as fragile as that, bindi, can become an art material, a particular medium for your artwork, or for that matter, very common steel utensils, sometimes enlarged in a huge scale, sometimes kept in as it is in the same scale. So, this artist, internationally renowned artist, Subodh Gupta is very, very successful in exploring this possibility of using stainless steel utensils, which is a very frequently used material in our Indian middle class society. And this is what he is using, and you can really feel the impact of the use of this kind of very commonplace like utensils like tiffin carrier, the small little stainless steel boxes, thalis, stuffs that we use every day. But when they are arranged in a certain way, they create a visual impact and they assume the status of an artwork. And this is what he has been doing. So, this is a very new idea for that matter of using not only different materials, but using a different idea, different concept of art. So, this is neither a sculpture nor a painting. You can't say that the cycle rickshaw has been built by the sculptor himself. No, this is something that has been mass produced. Even the stainless steel pitchers, the pots and pans have been mass produced. He simply has collected them and arranged them in a way that it creates a visual impact. And this is where the magic of this kind of artworks lie. Similarly, a huge mammoth truck, what is commonly known as the Punjab truck, but when it is made of very unconventional materials, very different kinds of materials, including the figures that you see standing on the truck, because it's all also about migration. It is made with very feeble metals, and the subject matter is migration. People are leaving from one place to another place, and when it is placed inside the confines of a gallery, it does create a huge impact. You can also have a look at this wonderful installation by another young artist, Sanjeev Sompipre, and there he uses all kinds of different kinds of materials for his installation, like chrome plated steel, fiberglass resin, automotive paints, cement paver blocks in different dimensions. Now, even one can use straight away direct things, things that you use in your daily life directly from your life and put them inside a gallery. So, what is important here in this kind of works is not exactly what material you are using. Material can be very banal, like this one, just a plastic chair, but you are actually interpreting it. Like this is not, of course, a very common plastic chair, though the artist has used a very common plastic chair, but then because he has interpreted the plastic chair by creating a strange gap or dissecting the chair in a certain way, it changes its meaning, and it is up to you now to give it another dimension of interpretation. Now, contemporary art has also given us this freedom to do things which are extremely ephemeral, extremely temporary in nature, like this one. Whether you call this art or not, that is a different issue, but definitely this is an art activity, where one of the artists one fine morning draws a series of windows and a big door on the bricks which have been stacked, and very soon these bricks will be taken away to build a real house. So, the house that you see on the bricks, either it is a dream house or these bricks will have to collapse this house, this drawn house with white chalk, in order to make the real house. Possibility of doing lot of interpretations with this kind of works is there, also because more than a work of art, it is about an art activity that we are talking about. So, contemporary art has given us this freedom of making art activity and art objects also very temporary if you desire. So, it need not always be very permanent. Then contemporary art, and if you are talking about various trends, another important trend which we have already mentioned at the beginning is the use of multimedia. So, you can have a whole installation with various projections, with using multiple channels and video projections, and then making a statement, a visual statement pertaining to the subject that you are working on. multimedia, digital art, and is at the one end of the spectrum, and the other end of the spectrum you also have something that is very ephemeral, something that is very non-permanent. You use deliberately objects that is perishable, that is not going to be there even after 10 days or 15 days. So, art is going to disappear. So, these various notions of what an art is, it is not now about when we talk about contemporary art, we do not necessarily talk about painting, drawing or sculpture anymore. Yes, these art forms are there, but at the same time we talk about digital art, we talk about multimedia art, we talk about this kind of arts. For example, this one by Atul Dodia, very well known contemporary Indian art, who has been directly using popular images. Like in this one, he has used the image of the Gabbar Singh from Sholay, and most of the images that he has used here are either from this or that popular film or some popular publicity images. So, this also has become a very interesting game for the artists to play with references, quotations or sourcing images from the popular domain. Now, you can say even Hussain has also done this, using the image of Madhuri Dixit, using the image of Mother Teresa, so on and so forth. But Hussain has kind of stylized those motifs in his own. Even when he draws Madhuri Dixit or Mother Teresa, it is Hussain, it is Hussein's style that ultimately overtakes that image. But in this case, Atul Dodia does not distort the original look of these popular figures. So, his style can wait, it stays back. What is foregrounded is the popular style, the visual style that is rampant, and that is something that people are very familiar with. So, when Atul Dodia is using a particular shot from a very famous film by Satyajit Ray, Apu's Sansar, there you can actually see from that Apu trilogy that Atul Dodia is not actually playing with the main motive that has been collected from that shot, from that film. Rest is up to him how he manages the composition. And while sourcing images from external sources like advertisements, popular films, publicity images, in contemporary times we see a very visible tendency also to be very self-reflexive. One often finds that the artist is painting or drawing himself or herself directly. So, artist also makes his or her presence felt right on the canvas, on the sculpture, but not with great reverence. I mean, artist does a makeover. He may, like in this painting, he may make himself almost look like a James Bond. So, by using his own image, the artist can create another visual statement. So, for the artist's own image is not a very neutral image. It is a very potential image which can be used to underscore certain statements or ideas in his paintings. Another painting by Atul Dodia you can see more later on in different books and publications, and of course there are catalogs. So, this one aspect is has gained a lot of popularity among the artists, that is use of references, quotations and sourcing images from the popular domain. But it is important to note that this particular habit, this tendency gets inseparably combined with the found objects, mass produced industrial objects, cheaply available items, and all towards fulfilling a certain idea. Now, this tendency has inspired the artists to make art more challenging, more experimental and even more radical in terms of the subject matter. Thus, contemporary art has often challenged the conventional idea of aesthetics and beauty. And I would like to add that contemporary art has not only challenged the idea of aesthetics and beauty, it has also challenged the idea of what is art now. So, you see, when we trace the history of art, whether it is Indian art or Western art or any art, does not matter. Any history of art pertaining to any place, from tradition, from ancient times through the traditional history, and when you finally arrive at the modern times, and then ultimately when we reach our own time, the contemporary times, definitely we observe a whole lot of changes that have taken place in medium, in technique, in subject matter, in purpose, so forth. I mean, there are a lot of changes that has taken place, so on and so forth. But have you ever given a thought to this, that whether the whole definition or idea of art itself has undergone any change or not? It seems when we finally reach contemporary art, for example, when you look at this artwork by an Indian artist, globally reputed, very well known Indian artist Anish Kapoor, who now lives and works abroad in England, when he makes this kind of artworks. So, the whole idea of what is art has changed. I mean, it is very difficult to categorize. I mean, until some time back, it was not difficult to categorize. Well, this is painting, this is sculpture. Now, people use artwork, people use art activity, people use the term art experience. I mean, the whole idea that art is an object necessarily has not disappeared, but it has taken a back seat. So, one of the important trends of contemporary art is and will always be to challenge, theoretically speaking, conceptually speaking, the whole definition of art. What is art now? Thank you.